After marrying the boy I grew up with, we still don't see each other much outside of our nightly routines. He's so uncaring that, even when I suggested a divorce, he just stared at me for a moment before getting up for me. "All right, I understand," he said. "You've worked hard these years. Thank you." I had very little luggage when Suitcase packed all my belongings before leaving. I turned back and closed the door, and Deeb, with his shirtless body marked by scratches, stood on the balcony smoking in silence. Being a dancing actress who rose to stardom at a young age, Elizabeth's return to the country became a trending subject. She appeared in an interview video wearing a red dress and was as flamboyant and passionate as ever, but the final picture through the half-lowered car window was what really got my attention. Elizabeth's head completely obscures a person's profile, even if I can see their face clearly. As the automobile was a globally limited edition Rolls-Royce, the man's prominent brow, nose, and jawline were visible, and their position suggested they were kissing Elizabeth's fans. I instantly identified the owner as my husband, which is B. Phantom. It's hard to believe that Gatsby Woodland was coming home tonight, so I took over the king-size bed in the bedroom with ease. In the middle of the night, I was awakened by a pair of cold arms. "Are you awake?" the person asked politely. "I'm sorry to bother you." I was still a little confused, so I took a moment to get up, and he had already wrapped his arms around me, leaving half of the bed. "I'm sorry," I said. "I thought you wouldn't be back tonight." The light turned on, and Gatsby, with his back to me, removed his bathrobe. The warm light cast a faint golden hue over his broad back and neck, like a painting full of strength and beauty. A minute later, his neck was close to mine. "Can I kiss you?" he asked Curtis Wells, but he didn't really wait for my permission. As our lips met, I could feel his neck getting wet. Gatsby propped himself up, stretched out his long arm, and opened the side nightstand. He then frowned. "Where is it?" "Sorry, I forgot to buy it," I said slowly. Gatsby looked down at me for a moment, then laid down beside me, his tone seemingly considerate. "It's okay tomorrow. After work you'll bring a box back." "A box? I would have hidden it if I had known." I steeled myself and replied then, "LL trouble you with that." "No trouble at all." The next morning, when I got up, the other half of the bed was already empty. I just quickly checked my phone and found it was already noon. The person who shared the pillow with me last night was back in the news. Gates Group CEO Gatsby was invited to watch Elizabeth's first performance after returning to the country, this time Medicon. Not only uncovered by Gatsby was the owner of the car from last night, but also analyzed with a magnifying glass that they must have spent the night together. Even though Gatsby wore a high-neck black shirt, it didn't hide the hickeys on his neck, and Elizabeth's lips coincidentally had a bit of abrasion. You could guess how intense their night must have been. Insiders revealed that Gatsby had once almost given Mary Elizabeth his inheritance of the Gates Group, but at a pivotal point, Elizabeth turned down the marriage proposal because she didn't want to become the daughter-in-law of the group and end her dancing career. Years later, when they were reunited, the lovers who had taught each other in their youth had become the best in their respective fields, and every glance and gesture between them seemed to be rooted in their past affection. The comments at the bottom of the news were primarily complimenting how well matched the tour, with only one person repeatedly posting a fake marriage. Sue was inundated with inquiries about the problems of marriage, the fact that no one can ever truly replace the person you loved most in your youth, and the possibility of divorcing and pursuing Elizabeth once more. I almost liked their comments when a picture of Gatsby giving Elizabeth flowers appeared on trending topics. It was backstage after the show, and Elizabeth was holding the flowers, smiling like a little girl. Gatsby, who rarely showed emotion, looked at her as if he was infected by her happiness, displaying a rare tenderness on his face. My heart was struck, and a lot of complicated thoughts came flooding in after 5 years of marriage and decades of knowing each other. I had never seen Gatsby smile at me like that, and he had never given me flowers. If Elizabeth was Gatsby's youthful obsession, then I was the burden that Gates Group had placed on him. Gatsby and Elizabeth I both attended the same school and grew up in the same neighborhood, but they had been learning calligraphy from the same teacher since they were young, which strengthened their bond. 2 weeks after our marriage, I received Gatsby's private contact information. Gatsby had been working overtime for 6 weeks and had never returned to our marital residence when my mother-in-law found out about it. She specifically came to inform me that I was taking care of Gatsby's health. I sent him my first message, "Sorry, I'm sorry to bother you. Are you coming home for dinner tonight?" He replied, "Yes, please tell me who you are, Alice." Gatsby did not send me his first message until 3 months later. A little while later, I heard the satisfying sound of money being put into my bank account. "Your account has been credited with $1 million, and there is a $1 million balance. New Year's Eve dinner. May I inquire what's the matter? I need to return to the old house." I knew right away from Gatsby's response that he would never love me because he treated me like an employee and used MDY to control me, but I was very forthright about it. Family marriages are like that. It didn't matter if he returned home or not. I could spend the money by myself. After one night in particular, the connection improved a little. But he had to lie in the same bed as me out of reluctance to allay the elder's suspicions. I hoped he wouldn't touch me, but his mother's soup that night was really spicy. He apologized first, then asked if it was okay, and finally, "If you're uncomfortable, just stop." I put up with it for a while, but finally said, "I feel like it's a bit too much." He quickly apologized, saying it was fine. I said after a long time I still didn't help but ask, "Why haven't you stopped?" Gatsa finally looked up at me under the dim light. He seemed a bit hesitant, but still leaned down and kissed me later. I understood why he lost control. That night Elizabeth had a boyfriend. Abroad that night was when she announced her relationship to the world. After discovering I was pregnant, I sent Gatsby a message with the Obstat Ultrasound report. He took a long time to reply. "Congratulations." 5 hours later he finally realized something. "Your account has been credited with $5 million balance. $1 million. Thanks for your hard work." 6 months later our child Tom was born. Dad Bet treated Tom very well, setting up a trust fund that covered his education, medical, and living expenses for life. Life passed slowly. Many people knew Gatsby was married, but didn't know what his wife was like. Apart from our nightly routines, we rarely saw each other. We only discussed Tom and never chatted casually. In these 5 years, we never argued about anything. We even got along respectfully. We simply remained unfamiliar. At 3 in the afternoon, I picked up Tom from kindergarten. In opening the door, I found Elizabeth lying on her living room sofa hugging our dog and greeting me back already. Tom, who always maintained a stern expression, screamed. He loved Elizabeth, Auntie, and had been enthralled with her dance videos ever since he first saw them. Elizabeth grinned at me and gave him a hair pat. "It appears that your son likes me even more, Sith." However, Tom looked at her intelli auntie, asking her to stay with us and not leave. I brought the groceries I had purchased into the kitchen, and I could still hear Elbath's laughing from a distance. "If I live in your house, where will your mom stay?" she inquired. Tom remarked that chess was pointless here because the door abruptly opened and the faucet ran. Gatsby stood at the door, looking a little worn out. "Could I come in?" "What's wrong?" He gestured to the pot of soup on the stove, saying, "It smells good. Can I have some?" I nodded. It was for Gatsby, and I had served him. As I was leaving, I noticed Elizabeth grinning at me unexpectedly and saying, "Sis, the soup you made is still as delicious as ever." I was pleased to see that Elizabeth had the bowl in her hand and drank it, and I'm contentedly I envy you for being able to cook, unlike me who has never even entered the kitchen. Tom said, "But Auntie, you're so good at dancing. It's okay if you can't cook, just let my mom make it for you." Tom had always been abused by Gates Group, and I was the only one who had expectations for him. As a result, Tom had always disliked me. He was similar to his father in that he only valued the things and people that he enjoyed. Elizabeth Wazir, not only my husband, my son, but even my dog preferred her. The thought of divorce solidified at that moment. A week later, on a night after we had just finished, I brought up divorce with Gatsby and he suddenly said he had to go out for an urgent matter. I interrupted him, saying I had something to say too. As I expected, he had no reaction. He just stared for a moment, then pushed himself up for me with a blank expression. "All right, got it," I said. It felt like receiving a notification from a secretary. I said, "I don't want the child either. How be your responsibility from now on?" "That's fine," he replied. I insisted, "You've worked hard these years, thank you." Even though there was no real affection, it must have been tough for him to sleep with me all these years. I had very little luggage, one suitcase packed, all my belongings. The divorce agreement was on the living room table, and I had already signed it. Before leaving, I turned back and closed the door. That's B with a shirtless body marked by Scratches silently stood on the balcony smoking. I didn't tell anyone about the divorce. Tom was sleeping in his room. Meanwhile, while my parents were celebrating Elizabeth's birthday in the Lynn family home. After Gatsby finished smoking, he would also go find Elizabeth, bringing with him a gift prepared in the study, a custom-made red dance dress. When I first saw it, I liked it, but like this marriage, it was mine. No one remembers that I also won the National Peach and Plum Cup Youth Group. When I was younger, the teachers said my physical talent was exceptional, with only 1 in 500 or even 1,000 people like me, but after accidentally falling from a high stage, I could no longer dance. Since then, I locked myself in my room daily, crying and remembering it as my most painful memory. My parents were also sad for a while, but quickly sent Elizabeth to the same teacher. If the elder sister had talent, maybe the younger sisters would be even higher. From then on. I bear to see anything related to dance tonight, like countless other nights before, was an ordinary evening. The wind was light and the moon was bright. From the moment I decided to leave until I boarded the plane, I never looked back. On the plane, a beautiful flight attendant brought out a small cake. Dear lady, thank you for choosing our airline. We all hope you have a wonderful birthday. After choosing my grandmother's house in the country as my destination, I was momentarily stunned and then grinned at her. Thank you. Chapter 6. After landing, I had to take a high-speed train and then a dedicated bus because, in recent years, the government had turned my grandmother's village into a tourist base with dedicated trains operating daily. After a tiring 5 or 6 hours, the bus wound to Mountain Road from the vintage glass windows. With the wind and heat pounding my face, the white cloud appeared to grow out of the earth. I snapped a few pictures and happily shared a few pictures on social media before my phone called, interrupting my leisure. It was Gatsby calling. What's up? Do you know the location of the medicine cabinet in the second-floor storage room? Tom has a fever. Okay. After a brief pause, Gatsby went on. I found it. Thanks, you're welcome. I was ready to end the call, but before I could, he added, hello, Grandma, for me, and come back when you're done. Tom continues phoning you, so I replied, you should let him know that we're already. Gatsby appeared to have smoked a cigarette during the abrupt divorce, and his tone was composed because to Holden. I pondered that name for a time, wondering what he had to do with this since he was back in his native nation. DBY mentioned that you two were now in the same location. Data's be desert me. You don't seem very rational right now, so I rub my temples. I don't understand what you're saying, and I don't want to stand. If you can't find anything later, you can ask the butler. If you're ill, take the kids to the doctor. I hope our relationship is one of mutual non-interference. Gatsby was quiet for a while, which is okay if you want it to be. When we got to Grandma's house in Chapter 7, I was thrilled to see that the once charming village had become more urbanized while maintaining its ethnic features. Your grape truss is recognizable, as is the front yard. A stranger appeared at the doorway. He was young, dressed in a black t-shirt, wore a silver bone chain, and appeared to have just been washed with chilly, damp steam. As we drew nearer, he continued to stare back at me while I shoved my suitcase and blurted out, hey, Alice. It was a complete coincidence that I ran into a former teammate from a competition when I returned to my hometown. Holden had continued dancing after graduating from college, and he and Elizabeth went abroad for further education. I had seen many of their promotional posters, and DBY knew a lot about his schedule because they were in the same troupe. He explained that he had always wanted to create a unique dance after returning home, and that since Grandma's tribe had gained fame recently, he specifically came here to find inspiration. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, he asked me hesitantly. I remained silent for a while before continuing, but then I found a doctor in the same field overseas whose clinic specializes in this kind of rehabilitation treatment. Alice, have you tried dancing since then? Alice. Holden looked at me anxiously, but if you don't want to act like I never said anything in the years following the accident, I had never given up on rehabilitation treatment, but those treatments eventually proved to be an effective holding technique. If you still want to dance, would you like to give it a try? The success rate might not be 100%, and the treatment could be fairly expensive. If you need it, I can lend you the money. The high cost of rehabilitation filled with hope, time, and again only two-faced despair coupled with our family's business setback, we see afford any extra money, and I gradually gave up. I married Gatsby, and after spending a few years in the haze of marriage I had long Lost my former spirit. I wanted to refuse Holden, but the words that came out were yes, even if there's only a 10 chance I want to try. After saying that, I stood there stunned, my hands trembling slight, my body still was willing to give up. Plans changed suddenly. After having dinner with Grandma in the village, I contacted the professor. Holden mentioned Professor Jane, asked me many questions, said there had been similar successful cases in the past, and told me not to worry. Her assistant Ben scheduled a meeting for next month. After hanging up, I thought I was dreaming. Hen seemed even more excited than I was. That's great, Alex. Thank you. My heartbeat also quickened, and I felt an unreal sensation, but Benny shook his head. Actually, I'm doing this for myself too. Alice. Chapter 8. If the treatment goes well, I would like to ask you for a favor. I didn't ask what the favor was, but it wasn't agreed upon right away. A month later, I flew overseas and discovered Professor Jan's medical center, despite the language barrier and lack of acquaintances. With daily rehabilitation treatments, my right foot, which I had previously believed would be permanently stiff, was gradually getting better. The staff even commented that I arrived earlier than their clock and time every day, Alice, which is enough for today's rehab. The assistant said with a smile, come back at the same time tomorrow, and if you arrive early, just open the door yourself. Professor Jane also said that my condition was severe compared to other patients, but that since I had taken good care of myself over the years, it wouldn't be long before I could be discharged. All we need is patience. Are you coming? Alice, a round-faced girl in a wheelchair, is at the door. She was Dorothy, and we shared a dormitory. Dorothy was in worse shape than I was. She was a tennis player who had been in a wheelchair for 5 years following a car accident. Every night we would make dinner together and go for walks by the river, but today Dorothy seemed depressed. Professor Jane said it's really hard for my legs to recover, and I saw his wedding picture online, so I knew who Dorothy was referring to when she talked about Dorothy's mixed after several days and nights of training, doubles companion, whom she had known since childhood, made the decision to commit their life to the same goal. Were able to participate together at last. Despite surviving the accident, she lost all feeling in her legs. It was reported that the lad had been waiting for her in the country for 5 years and was now getting married, so I was happy for him. Dorothy put away her tennis gear, split up, and left for overseas. I gave her a pat on the head and gave her a tissue as Dorothy replied, wiping away her tears, no one stays in one place forever. It's good that he's moving forward, but I still have a strong sense of being left in the past. Is it shameful to think like this? Dorothy opened a bottle of red wine and fell into a groggy sleep. I carried her to bed and tucked her in when I got a message from an unknown number. Grandma said, "You went abroad. Do you have enough money?" I looked at it and tried to figure out who it might be. Then I got a message saying, "Your bank account has been credited with $5 million, current balance $10 million. I knew who the new number belonged to at that point, so I stared at the message for a while before transferring the money back. Chapter 99. As the rehabilitation treatment was about to begin, Holden said he was in the area and would come get me. He spoke with Professor Jane for a while before grinning and congratulating me. Outstanding dancer, Alice. I've just recovered, so there's still a long way to go, and as of right now, I don't even have a place to go. I was shocked to hear that. It's too excessive. Holden's smile dimmed as he recalled that I had asked for a favor from you. He stroked his nose, and I nodded. My dance is complete, however a lead dancer is required. Alice, would you be willing to take on the role? I was completely stunned. No, I began. I used to perform in several small troupes, and it didn't matter if I messed up. Holden said you don't need to feel too much pressure, think it over, and let me know. I knew I should refuse because this was Holden's important creation. There were many more professional dancers who were more suited for this opportunity, but at that moment I opened my mouth and cow and bring myself to say the words of refusal. I wanted this opportunity so much. After returning, Dorothy learned about this and scolded me. I refuse. You must go. I'll find her suitcase. If you dare to give up, I'll never acknowledge you as my friend. You know, Alice, enduring pain is easy. Just stay in one place and keep walling, but taking action and changing the pain is very difficult. You have to tear yourself apart and move forward, then piece yourself back together to see even a tiny bit of opportunity, and that tiny bit of opportunity is still competed for by many others. She smiled bitterly and said, I've been weak enough, but I hope my friend can be brave, so don't be afraid, Alice. Move forward soon. My treatment was over, and I finished cleaning the dorm, stocking the refrigerator with food, and telling Dorothy to text me if she found nothing. Despite our brief time together, I was reluctant to leave, but for some reason, I kept dragging it out. Hurry up. Dorothy impatiently urged me, and the last time I saw her, she was sitting by the window, waving at me. The sunlight stung her clean, gentle face, and she continued to smile as if she had never had any worries. Chapter 10. After I returned home, my parents discovered that I had divorced Gatsby. They were furious, saying, "Have you lost your mind? We paved such a good path for you, and you just threw it away." They threatened to remarry me, but I refused, and my father, clutching his chest, said angrily, "I think you have a problem. How did I raise such a fool?" My mother remained silent, just staring at me with disappointment. I echoed my father's advice, which was that even if a man cheats, you should live in his home for the rest of your life because by the time the child receives the money, you will have made it. I shook my head with Elizabeth around because D-Boy won't withdraw his investment from her familyless business. The person he wants to marry has always been Elizabeth, and you know this too. Don't you soon receive their good news? They still didn't seem to understand, sternly saying, "If you insist on this, never step into our home again." Alice, you're 20 skies, you're not a naive little girl. You can't just think about yourself. You can't just think about yourself. You have to consider the family too. I got up and put the heart medication in front of my father. I cried as I said, "Mom and Dad, for so many years I've put you before myself countless times. If you're unwilling, consider that I was never born to you." They were shocked, as if they had never imagined that I, who always obeyed, could be so stubborn. I rented a new place and blocked all family contact every day. I immersed myself in the dance studio, practicing the dance hold and choreographed. Most of the people in the dance troupe are quirky but easy to get along with. We joked around, but once the dancing began, everyone became serious. I didn't want to fall behind for a long time, so I stuck to the 8 a.m. routine. I thought I would find it difficult to adjust to the new life, but the exhaustion left me with no time to do so. One evening after work, Holden decided to join me for a city walk, where we walked through the nighttime streets from one street handle to the next, and at the end of the street, we arrived at the apartment I rented. This life was definitely less comfortable than being Mrs. Date's grown poop without the butler and nanny. We also had to do everything by ourselves whenever it rained, and the haphazard household chores left me exhausted. Holden said, "You've changed completely from how you were 6 months ago." Have I become shabby? I asked my parents if they saw me now, and they probably wouldn't recognize me at all compared to the well-dressed housewife I used to be. I only wear a t-shirt and sneakers when I go out, and I've also become less polite and even swear with the members of the dance group. They say that swearing cleans the heart, so I think it's Holon rubbed his nose. I thought your eyes were very melancholic back then, but now it's on me. Even though you dress casually, you smile more, and I like the current you. We reached the apartment door, and I felt a little embarrassed to hide it. I, too, out my key to open it, but all of a sudden, a figure of G-Boy stood in front of me and asked calmly, "Who are you and who is he?" Holden's expression stayed neutral. We had a child, and Holden was about to respond when I gave him a little shove, telling him to keep quiet because we were already divorced. I told Gat that the child was no longer related to me, but I would provide for the child's support. I then proceeded to open the apartment door. I kindly asked if he would like a cup of tea. Steam rose from the teacup. Gatsby sitting on the living room sofa, which appears a little small for him, as Gatsby and Holden didn't appear to be leaving. It's okay, he followed me around the kitchen like a tiny dog. Since I've been here before, I know where everything is, so I'll make myself a glass of orange juice instead of tea. The tea became chilly. Gatsby hadn't left yet, so I had to ask him if there was anything else before I went to bed. "You can say whatever you want," I said. Gatsby nodded, put down his teacup, and still maintained my composure, but the veins on the back of his hands were bulging. "Alice, you'll regret your choice." Gatsby looked at Holden and then suddenly broke into an inexplicable smile. "So it's really for this pretty boy." When did you start this? I had been practicing dance all day and was too exhausted to explain further. He claimed that as he got up and walked away icily, he asked abruptly if I had ENT up anything. I looked at him and laughed. Yeah. To which he replied slowly, so am I responsible? He then didn't smile or move, his thin eyelids dropping as though he were intently observing me. I was 3 years older than Holden and Hen, and I had learned to dance earlier, so I was like his senior. When he was starving to control his weight, I would sneak him out to buy snacks, and when the teacher discovered it and yelled at me, he would stand in front of me and cry that it was all his fault. I didn't know when it started, but Holden seemed to have grown up, so I was just kidding. Holden said, "The old-fashioned air conditioning blew cool air." Sorry, Holden sighed. Well, rejected once, he said nonchalantly, walking to the door. It's late, I won't disturb you anymore. I hesitated for a moment and asked if I could still practice with the dance troupe tomorrow. He said no, and I stared at him in shock. Do you think I'm the type of person who uses power for personal gain? Holden waited at the entrance and gazed at me as I relaxed and got up to see him. See you tomorrow. I leaned in. Alice, even though I'm so upset because this is only the first time you have 100 chances to turn me down. He turned around as soon as he finished speaking and added, see you tomorrow. I stood for a bit before going back to the living room to shut the window. During the official rehearsal of Chapter 12 of the dance performances, I realized that Holden had been too modest. The so-called small theater was actually the largest theater in the city, hosting the most popular plays and stage dramas nationwide. During rehearsal, he purposefully brought an EV camera to record the entire process. If we become famous, we can make a documentary later. Come on, Ollie dancer, say something if the performance is a success, he said, pointing the camera at me. Too formal, Holden shook his head. Try again. Holden, someone is calling for you. Peter needs you. Holden left. My pulse was still pounding as I opened the DV to watch the tape from the previous rehearsal. The other dancers talked about where to go for dinner after the first performance, but Hen came down from upstairs with a less than happy expression. He cleared his throat and flatly announced that the performance would be delayed and the venue changed to another theater. It was an intense workout. The dance Holden choreographed was called Eclipse Dance, and it featured a mythical bird living in the forest. In the video, I wore an elaborate blue feather costume with light green eye makeup that transformed me into a mysterious and graceful bird. Despite their complaints, the troupe remained composed and erupted in anger, asking why the theater had subpar stage effects and why they were damaging your reputation. The audience is the same, so it doesn't matter if it's a smaller venue, we just need to do a good job. However, within a few days, I found out from the troupe members that the new theater also turned away our performance. Even the slowest person noticed that something wasn't right because we were typically the ones who were sought out for performances. How could this have happened, and who had we offended? As I was using the restroom, I heard the troupe members sobbing and heard that the sponsoring Gates organization had protested the casting because they thought our lead dancer lacked. Due to the popularity of Cyan and fame, ticket sales increased by twofold. Peter initially wanted Elizabeth to play the lead because she was more well-known, but Holden turned her down. Why didn't Holden invite Elizabeth this time, or was it because of Alice's past? If Alice had a past, the switch wouldn't have occurred. It's just that he likes her, and she doesn't notice how he looks at her. Even if he does like her, it shows in Trisk our future, which is absurd. After standing outside for a while, a text message from Godspy appeared on my phone screen. Are you able to speak now, Alice? Chapter 13. When I returned, the white villa in the suburban mountains and lakes was still as magnificent as ever. The driver dropped me off at the villa's main entrance, and I entered the fall, where Gatsby was sitting quietly by the marble table, staring at me. Everything in the house was the same as it had been when I left, including my pink slippers and the golden vase in the living room that contained the white roses I had placed there but had since dried out. The nanny, Tom and Stum, called out too. Me, Mommy. His eyes welled up with tears. I miss you terribly, and I dream about you. Have you not returned to visit me? Let's go right to the subject, Gatsby. What do you want out of the divorce? All of Gatsby's actions looked strange to me. He merely asked that you return and live here again, promising to provide you money, clothes, and jewelry if you still wanted to dance, as well as better choreographers. Gatsby picked up his coffee cup and took a sip, thinking, "Can Holden give you these things really?" I said, "What the price, no price. Harder Venice or Venus and better colleagues. As long as you're with me, you'll never be turned away by any theater. Just keep things the way they are." Gatsby appeared amused. "Tom doesn't have to leave me." I stared at him for a time, wondering why Elizabeth had turned down your proposal once more. Tom needs a mother, and I need a wife. Elizabeth had rejected Gatsby, and he had picked me instead. "If you came here to discuss this," Gatsby's expression became awkward and his tone became cold. "What does it have to do with her? Say what you want. I can tell you now that I don't need what you're offering. Is it worth it?" Debuai laughed angrily as he gave up the life he was giving you for a man. "I told him it wasn't for him, but you just don't believe it." As for whether it's worth it, I smiled slightly. "Vine, you're so self-righteous. What about your dance troupe members? Can they accept repeatedly losing their jobs?" "Holden can't. What can he provide you, even if he secures himself?" "You're frightening me with them." DBY responded, "When you married me, didn't you weigh the pros and cons?" I remarked, "I'm just analyzing the pros and cons," and I left because if this is your so-called Wayne, the pros and cons only make me feel disgusted. DBY was stunned, and the coffee cup fell to the floor, shattering with a crisp sound. The butler sang, and the tension took Tom away. "Elizabeth's sister, even if she rejected you, you could still be around her like this." Gatsby got up and approached me carefully. "We have nothing more to say, so why are you talking to me like this?" DBY took a firm hold of my hand and appeared really irate with red eyes. "Alice, what specifically do you dislike about me? Have I not lived up to your expectations?" I said nothing. Gatsby was distressed as well, letting out a big sigh and his voice suddenly becoming quiet and low. "Anything you want in the future if you find something wrong with me," Alice said, but he hesitated. "I can't change myself." I stated that she was divorced. "Does it matter what you say now?" Glancing down at me, Gatsby punched a number on his cell phone. "Hi Harry, this is me. I don't believe Holden should be the leader of your dance group." I took the phone and disconnected up right away, saying, "This is between us." My body shook with rage, and I continued, "There's no need to drag innocent people into it." Gatsby's black eyes were fixed on me as he extended a hand before turning back to me. "Alice, I'm not a nice person, but I can do anything you want of me." Chapter 14. Holden was startled when I called him to cancel the dance performance. Because I hesitated on the phone, I wasn't shocked that they didn't leave me. We're performing in a really rundown theater. As someone who belongs on the biggest stage, how could I accept this? On the other end, Holden remained quiet. "I'll become better and offer you a bigger stage hold after I interrupt. Don't you understand? Become someone else. Don't keep using me." I'm breathing heavily. Gatsby sat next to me, caressing my hair, and I hung up. "Good lady, have you become into a moron?" I was appalled and answered, "Yes, but B." Without altering his gaze, Gatsby continued, "Damn you, damn your father, damn your entire family." As my rage increased, I swore fuckingly, but he held my chin, and as we drew closer, our breaths started to blend before he could plant a kiss on me. Gatsby's face clouded when I reached out to block him, but he said, "Remember, until the bad is finished, have some self-respect." I said. Gatsby straightened up, his face without anyone missing from the dance forces of the official platform. Ashen and Left would continue to flip the planet. After the lead part was switched to Elizabeth, the promotional poster that had our group shot was swapped out for a solo poster of her. Elizabeth's photo on the poster still had the attractiveness of a seductive red rose. The poster indicated the performance stress as the initially chosen Grand Theater remained in the most popular time slot, and the number of comments underneath multiplied several times over, and the tickets sold out fast. I switched off my phone and began playing the accompaniment and salute. Holden had brilliantly and creatively choreographed the solo dance, which showed the mythical bird being exiled by its clans on expressing its emotions alone in the late, both wildly and sorrowfully. I had practiced the caney spins, leaps, and tiaras talls innumerable times, and in the empty room, I remembered the moves I had practiced over and over. Even someone who didn't understand dance could see the technical difficulty and emotional depth in this solo performance. I was well aware that I would never get the chance to present it again. It was like a seed that had been tended to every day for a long time, and one day it bloomed, but before it could open completely, a passerby picked it up. No one gave a damn about the numerous nights of waiting and anticipation, and when the flower wilted, it was just lost opportunities. Chapter 15 of Mr. Miss Forever. On the surface, Gatsby appeared to be fulfilling his promise that he would make amends if he had done something incorrectly beforehand, but in fact, he was just observing me at home on the day of Elizabeth's performance. During this time, Gatsby stayed at the suburban villa every day and only came home at night, even when handling business-related matters. "Are we going out tonight?" "No, but tonight is Auntie's performance, Dad. You used to take me to see it. Be quiet," replied Gatsby icily as he sat in the living room reading a picture book to Tom. His phone on the neighboring table continued to vibrate, but he didn't even look at it. Time passed quickly, yet I didn't leave. When his phone rang, Tom picked it up. He inquired anxiously, "Are you in pain now?" "All right, Dad and I will come right away." "What's going on, Dee?" After hearing whatever it was that made him cry instantly. During her performance, a tie fell and was scowled at. When Tom suggested that we go save her daytatso, his face instantly altered. He got up and called the driver, changing his code rapidly before turning to face me after remembering something. "What can we eliminate this time, Alice?" Gatsby questioned Tom, looking at us. Why hasn't that left yet at such a crucial moment? I responded, no, I wasn't surprised. I stared at him. The contract is clear, isn't it? 2 weeks prior, Gatsby had threatened to give me everything if I stayed with him, including Holden and the dance troupe members. It was the most straightforward wager I had ever made in my life. If you can spend a month without seeing Elizabeth, consented to what you asked for. Gatsby appeared to find it extremely easy and consented right away, believing it to be nothing more complicated than not seeing Elizabeth for a month. In fact, I knew him better than he did. Elizabeth had a special place in his heart, and he could never and would never turn her down. As he stood there, Tom lifted his watch and showed me a picture of her legs covered in blood. "It hurts so much, Dad." "Why are you hesitating about this? It's not like you at all." Gatsby closed his eyes and opened them again. "I apologize for what he told me. I'll explain later, Alice." Then he turned back, snatched up Tom, and hurried out without pausing. Comet sprays the fairy tale love with just a few comments stating that Elizabeth had performed mediocrely and missed the essence of the choreography, but those were swiftly removed after being criticized by Elizabeth fans. Chapter 16. The news of the famous dancer Elizabeth's accident during her performance had made headlines. No one cared about the dance performance's content. Instead, they were more interested in the fact that Gatsby had used the Gates Group's resources to send a helicopter to get her to the hospital. Elizabeth herself sent me a photo. Gatsby and T sat by her hospital bed, Plen pouring her water, the other peeling an apple, looking like a real family. I knew what she meant. She was saying, "You lost again." She always enjoyed playing this boring game of love competition. With me when we were kids, it was about competing for our parents' love. After marriage, it was about competing for Gatsby and Tom's love. She always wanted to be the one on top. This time was no different, but in reality, I hadn't lost. I started this war every day. I sent Elizabeth a photo of Gatsby at home with me. In this world, the person I understood best besides Gatsby was Elizabeth, though it may sound dark, it was true. Gatsby didn't understand why he repeatedly gave to Elizabeth, but was continuously pushed away, because Elizabeth is the type who once she has someone's affection no longer cares about them. She rejected Gatsby simply out of fear of no longer receiving that special treatment once she was won over. After all, only by being a distant moon forever chased will it be forever pursued. So when she found out Gatsby was starting to avoid her and reject her, for me, the more Gatsby avoided her, the more Elizabeth tried to find ways to keep him around, so Gatsby could never win this bet. However, I didn't expect Elizabeth to use her own body as leverage. She believed she had one, but she was totally mistaken. Her attitude started to shift because she was unwilling and could not bear losing the pictures I sent her of Gatsby at home with me. The most crucial factor for a dancer is having a body that is both agile and healthy. A game of love she pursued was merely a glamorous illusion. Chapter 17. Perhaps because of guilt, when I moved back to my rented apartment, D-Bay didn't stop me. The poster for Eclipse Dance was replaced again, but this time it was said to be Holden's request. After Elizabeth Curry Colleen continued performing, Holden didn't contact other dancers for a quick fix. He announced on the public platform that no one could capture the soul of Eclipse Dance like we did, therefore subsequent performances would be cancelled one by one. After seeing many negative comments in the comments section, I knocked on Holden's door again. He didn't seem very happy. His usually stylish hair was messy, and he was only wearing gray sweatpants as he opened the door. I said, forcing a greeting, I still wanted to compete for the opportunity Elizabeth gave up, but since I had been so harsh last time, I guessed Holden would be quite upset. Sure enough, he looked at me with a blank expression and said, if you're here to sympathize with me, I don't need it. Seeing his cold demeanor, I shrank back. I just want to ask if your Dan troupe was looking for performers. I would like to recommend myself. Is that possible? Holden looked at me for a moment, his face still. Why do you think I would let someone else to abandon me once more? Unchained Senior? I didn't think it would ever be seen again, so I kept it in my diary. How humiliating. Gatsby kept staring at me after we got married. I always assumed you hated me and only married me for the money, so I treated you the way I did. If I hadn't believed Elizabeth at the time, we would have never missed each other. Gatsby, I interrupted him about who was wrong, but that time has passed, and I don't like you at all now. If you understand that clinging is not your style, please don't let Tom or me think less of you. Gatsby's face turned pale. He muttered an apology, got up, and left without saying anything. I've heard that he and Elizabeth never got married, but Elizabeth went back to her parents' house, but because of her leg injury and frequent outbursts, which made life difficult for her parents, Gatsby kept taking Tom to see my shows at the theater. Occasionally, I told the staff not to let them into the backstage area. Chapter 18. After the show was complete and everyone else had left, a stranger who had made the biggest impression on me approached me with a bouquet of flowers and asked me, very clumsily, Miss Alice, do you remember Dorothy? I nodded, and he let out a breath of relief before introducing himself as Dorothy's brother, who was here to bring flowers for her. I asked him why she hadn't come herself because I wanted to save a special spot for her, and he shook his head, saying, I'm sorry, she had planned to come in person, but unfortunately Cal didn't make it 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, Dorothy passed away overseas due to complications from her surgery. I was thrilled to see her smiling face from the past again. Her final wish was to see me on stage with the white roses and a card that had Dorothy slanting and me writing Alice. I think you'll carry on with my spirit in the next life, so let's meet a little earlier. All right, you're my forever friend, Dorothy. My eyes lingered on the last line, smiling face, and the hand-reading gradually blurred, and I couldn't see anything clearly. Chapter 19. Much later, the Nashville her ended, and I told her to hold me. I had applied for a job with a dance master overseas whom I admired, and she accepted my application, agreeing to let me join the troupe, but she didn't understand that I would have to start from the bottom. I just glanced at him. Faye in the country is excellent. Starting from scratch seems simple, but it takes too much work and is exhausting. Hank's eyes glowed. Are you avoiding me? Did you hurt my feelings? I shook my head. Holden on me. When my first marriage began, I didn't think it was shameful to love someone. Like many others, I thought love should be the most important thing in the world. But now that I've been divorced once and have a child, I still think love is important because it connects me to each of you, but after finishing the major things, I've discovered that I'm still not satisfied. In addition to love and marriage, there are many things I need to do, and love is important, but it can't stop me from pursuing my goals. Holden inquired as to how long you would be gone. At least 3 years. After a long period of silence, Holden said, my grandfather is sick, so I can't go abroad with you these days. It's enough for me to go alone. Take care of yourself, okay? He went on, I won't wait for you, okay? Don't wait for us to speak further. Holden's eyes began to well up with tears, and his eyelids turned red and his eyes opened. He closed his eyes, leaned down, and gave me a tight hug. Do you remember what I said earlier? You have 100 chances to reject me. He got up, wiped away his tears, and flashed his well-known smile. I adore you just as you are, so go ahead and do it, Alice, if that's what you want. Don't look back.